What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Day One Perspective. We're on today talking about sponsorships. So, Jared, can you start us off by telling us what are sponsorships in our sport?
I would say there's definitely probably levels to the sponsorships. I would say kind of starting it off, there's a more of a like you're an enthusiast in the sport and maybe receiving a discount for product and representing the company for that. And I would say that's more of like an enthusiast that's getting a little bit of a discount, right? Then I would say getting into the entry level, like maybe you haven't been in the sport long, but you've done okay or doing pretty good, establish yourself as somebody in the sport, then you might start getting free product, somewhere around those lines. And in return, you're representing that company and their brand through competing. Then, as you have established yourself in the sport, you've done well for, I would say, like a minimum of 2 years. You've done well. Then a sponsorship can and probably should progress to where you're getting reimbursements for match fees and expenses and getting free product and representing them and their brand based on your specific like skill sets within the sport.
Sure.
Right. So I would say, and then from there, they can progress into a whole gamut of things based on what you're good at within the sport and different things. So yeah, I guess I would kind of establish maybe like a couple of levels or like put some light on that. So
How would one obtain a sponsorship within our sport?
So first, I would say like so I started in 3-gun is where I got my first sponsorships. Then went into competing in the tactical games, got sponsorships through the tactical games. Then when I owned it, I saw a whole nother side of things and gave up all of my sponsors when I bought the tactical games. And then after I sold it, I basically got my sponsors back that I had before. And definitely you want to wait until you have established yourself and have a history in the sport. So there is a bad habit that I think some people get into, which it's like, hey, I want to compete in this sport. I need sponsors.
Right.
It's not going to happen. Sponsors are very hard to get. And as much as like, everybody kind of seems to come into it with like, which I respect, and like you're kind of coming into it with you don't know.
Sure.
But you come into it and I have this angle, and you kind of pitch that to a company, and likely they've like that marketing person or whatever has heard that pitch for the 300th time this year, and they're honestly probably not going to be too interested in it. So really if I was guiding somebody into how to get a sponsorship, step one is to get really good, gain respect, and have a history of performing very well in the sport.
Sure.
And not only as an athlete, but you have to give back to the sport in some way. So volunteering at events, even after, so you've won every match for 5 years and all this stuff, you still need to give back to the sport and be a productive member of the community, because it's an important thing. There's a multifaceted way to get the sponsorships, but definitely first, like you have to establish a history in the sport, and you have to establish a history of performance in the sport is probably the most respected way to do it. However, there's like a balance, right? So let's say you're out there winning, which has happened with some people in the past where they come and they do really, really well. In 3-gun, one of my really good friends that I have in 3-gun wins almost every single time he shoots a match, and he has no social media. He doesn't have any way to promote anybody or anything except for the people that show up and see what he's shooting at a match, which in 3-gun is like, it's only the shooters there. There's no spectators in 3-gun. So yeah, he is legitimately one of the best shooters in the sport, or maybe the best in the sport. Or you got like Daniel Horner there, but besides him, he's really good. How do you get out to the world what you're shooting? Right. So you can't just be somebody that's showing up to matches and winning everything and never posting anything about it. Like you're basically becoming a marketing person, or a person that is marketing, or at least providing material that they can use to market for themselves. Right. So you might not have a super awesome, huge, like none of us do in the shooting sports, because we're all shadow banned, but the providing the company with media so that they can use that media on their platform is valuable to them, and they can get your story out on how and what you're doing with their products. So yeah, there's a million different things, but you have to be very balanced with it. You can't just be out performing and not telling people about what you're using, and then you can't be somebody who tells everything about what they're using and then goes and gets like 57th place.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you have to have substance behind what you're saying.
Sure.
So yeah, those are.
Once you feel like you've been in the sport a while, you've been performing well, perhaps you haven't met people in these organizations that you want to be sponsored by. Mm-hmm. How would you go about creating that initial connection with them?
100% honesty. It's extremely hard. Mm-hmm. The people that make decisions in the companies on who is getting sponsored and who is not getting sponsored and what they're looking for and what they're not looking for don't make themselves like super easy to find and get a hold of. And it's because they get so many sponsorship requests from everybody that decides that they might want to start shooting in mm-hmm. a sport. So they kind of make themselves hard to get a hold of. The best way is to earn a ton of respect in the community and earn respect of your peers.
Yep.
And the way that you're going to get a sponsorship is through somebody who is already sponsored with that company.
Right.
Right. So the somebody in that company may reach out and say, hey, we're thinking about picking up another shooter. Who would you suggest? Mm-hmm. Right. And that's typically how a sponsorship or how a relationship starts with a company, is through another sponsored shooter who you've earned respect with. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's really how you're going to make the contacts.
Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, like having sponsorships is kind of a two-way street, right? They help you out in doing what you want to do in your sport, and you also have to provide value back to them. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about like how to provide value back to your sponsors?
Yeah. And one is being very honest up front with the company. That like the first conversation I always have with companies that I'm going to shoot for or thinking about shooting for is like, I'm not a shill for you. Like, I've had sponsorships in the past where I really, really like 70% of what they have, but mm-hmm. there's 30% that's like, I'm not using that.
Right.
But if they're like, no, you're using it and you have to use it if you're going to shoot with us, then I'm like, go find somebody else.
Sayonara.
Yeah. So you really have to believe in what you're using. And then also like you earn a lot of respect with fellow shooters, with people in the community, with people coming up. If they message you and say, hey, I'm thinking about getting this, and you're like, hey, this is a really, really good company, that's probably not one of their best products. These are the things that you should look at. Or instead of, getting product A, B, and C from them, get product A and B, and then get C from this company because they make this product that's really good.
Sure.
So you're being honest with people. And then as far as providing like the media and stuff, you really like, for me at least, just being real about it. Like I'm not going to go make professional videos and stuff of myself doing certain things. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think with a lot of people, it doesn't really, while all those like really good professional videos go really far for organizations, I think that it kind of starts painting a picture that you're almost a shill for a company if you have like a media team out per like
Sure.
Yeah.
doing that stuff. So be yourself, make sure that the company is going to be okay with you being yourself. And like, I'm very honest with the companies that I shoot for and like how I'm going to represent them and stuff like that.
Right.
And make sure that you align with them really well. And then conversely, if the relationship starts out really well, and let's say like the marketing team changes and they start heading in another direction that isn't you, it might be time to step away from it.
Sure.
Right. So don't be shy about that. Like, you get one shot at your, image or brand or whatever, and you don't want to muddy it up with being with the wrong people. So
Yeah. I feel like sometimes you can get DMs on Instagram and stuff of these random companies that slide in. They're like, hey,
All the
we want
time.
to sponsor you. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So how does one distinguish between a legit sponsorship and a maybe that's not worth it sponsorship?
It's how you value your time. I've had that conversation with you, and I've had that conversation with a lot of other athletes, right? So it's like, cool, they want to give you, what's the most recent one that I got? I got one like 3-4 days ago.
Nutrition is one that I've gotten before.
Yeah. They're like, hey,
Supplements.
we want to, we like what you do and we want to send you this. And it's like, hey, I have agreements with other companies, and this is what I ask for in return for representing, and I have to keep it consistent across the board, because I'm going to respect the relationships I have with these other companies, and I'm not going to represent somebody just like, hey, cool, I got sweatbands and look at my cool sweatband. Like, I'm not going to do that. So you have to, and I honestly, the first thing that I do is I just tell them like, hey, if you want to talk, that's great. And like, I'll have a conversation with you. We'll talk about it, talk about how, make sure it's a good fit, what direction you're going, what other stuff do y'all have. And we can talk about that. And 99% of the time, they just wanted to send you something, and they're like, hey, we want to make you 3 posts and we'll send you XYZ. So yeah, I usually don't pay attention to that. Like, I'm nice to them and send them a message and say, if you ever need anything in the future, let me know. But yeah, I would say it's not super often, but once, maybe, it's more than once a month. I get somebody sending me something, asking me to wear something or do whatever. So
Could you shed a little light? I know we have some professional CrossFitters that have come into the space. They've come into the space with a bunch of their own sponsorships from the fitness industry. Some of them get shooting sponsorships rather quickly. Will you shed a little light on why that is they get that?
Yeah, definitely. So like I said before, so you have some people that can go out and produce a ton of media, right? And you have some people, and there might not be any substance behind it.
Sure.
Then you have some people that can go win every match, but they don't have any media, right? So you fall in between there. And let's use Hepner for an example,
Sure.
right? Like he's got thick skin. He's a good dude. And we're friends. So Hepner came into the space and got a little bit, some people were a little bit bent, right? Because he had really good sponsors from the get-go and stuff. That dude started his fitness career in like 2010, right? So the amount of effort that he has put into building a brand that can go and show products, not only building a brand, but his reputation is spotless, right? His reputation as a competitor in the sport of CrossFit, spotless.
Yep.
Tell me one bad thing you've heard about that dude. Zero, right? He works his butt off to be good at things. And because of that, he has a huge following of people that are paying attention to what he's doing. Right. So when he started, it was rough. Like, he'll tell you that. Like, he wasn't a great shooter, and he knew he wasn't. He was honest about it. Now, completely different story. He's worked extremely hard. I don't care what shooting discipline you would put him in, he's not going to go win. But at the end of the match, you're not going to be like, that guy was a joke.
Right.
Right. Like at the end of the match, you're like, wow, he's a lot better than I thought he was. Like he can actually
he's
shoot.
respectable for sure. Man.
So and that's anywhere.
Right.
Right. So because of the things that he had done in the past, essentially 14 years of working his butt off to get, I don't know what his main account has, like over 100, maybe
he's
over
got
200,000.
Yeah, between all of his accounts, it's up a couple 100,000.
Then he has a YouTube channel that does really good. And also, so he has all of this platform.
Sure.
Right. And then the other thing that he has is a history of doing what he said he's going to do.
Right.
Right. So if he puts out a plan, he goes and he shows a company, this is going to be my plan for the year. And this is how I'm going to do it. And this is what I'm going to do. They know he's going to do it. Right. So he used that reputation that he had there. He started working. He was producing. He was doing everything that he said he was going to do. And then those relationships continued to grow. And arguably, he's worked harder for all of the sponsorships that he has than any other shooter in this sport.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Because he started 14 years ago.
Right.
Right. I think he started in like 2010, 2011.
Way back,
yeah. So, first when he started, he just had a really big following of loyal people that were paying attention to what he was doing. And he wasn't a great shooter. Now he is a very good shooter. Mm-hmm. And he's capitalizing on it.
Right.
I love it. That's exactly what he should be doing. Like he's approached everybody. Like not one of the companies that he's worked for, even as an owner, has had one bad thing to say about him. So that is coming in from a different sport. You're going to continue to see it.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is that it's good for everybody. Mm-hmm. Right. So these companies that come in from the sport, like Born Primitive started in CrossFit. Mm-hmm. Right. So CrossFitters started coming to the sport. Now Janae has a sponsorship, Born Primitive. If those CrossFitters never came into the sport, does Born Primitive even look this way? Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Right? Yep. Like we don't know. And so it's good for everybody.
Sure.
That they bring these people into the sport, because now what they might do is they might go to Hetner and say, hey, we want to pick up somebody that's been in the sport for a long time. Do you have any ideas? Right? And then he has an opportunity to create a relationship with somebody else. So you shouldn't look at it as a negative thing. No. That somebody with a really good reputation and does what they said they're going to do, it starts creating a relationship with the companies. It's awesome. It elevates everybody when that happens. And that's not only from CrossFit, but that's from Spartan Racing, like whatever, wherever they're coming from. It's awesome. Like if they're bringing their sponsors with them, cool. Like it's now there's more eyeballs on the sport than there was before. So you should support it, not look bad on it.
Well, there's not much to say with as hard as he works and the amount of time he puts into it.
Hardest working guy in the sport.
Sure. So like there's not much to say about it as far as that is like, oh, he's just not working hard, but he gets all these things because he's a big time. No, he's working really, really, really hard at this. And there's a reason why he got this.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and not only that, he's also put time into helping other people learn how to navigate the sponsorships.
Yeah, he brings people in every now and then to his barn and shoots with them and stuff like that.
Yeah, and not only that, but like he's helped people like educate them on how to talk to sponsors and how to approach it and stuff like that. Sure. So like he's been a very productive guy in the sport for sure.
Right.
So when people come in like that, like you shouldn't be like, man, they just started and no, it should be like, hey, they're bringing in a ton of eyeballs that weren't here and likely might not have ever been here.
Sure.
And that's good for everybody. So, but yeah, that's what my opinion is on the.
Sorry, I needed to push the red button every now and then just to kind of see what it's like.
Is there a case where sponsorships might not be worth it for you to pursue?
Like 95%.
95%.
Oh yeah.
That's a
so like
Janae just was like, oh my god.
Did not expect that.
You really have to sit down and decide, like, let's use this example, right? Janae's Rifles gets in contact with me, right? And like, Janae's really wants me to shoot their rifle in the tactical games. I already have a rifle that's a really good rifle, and I like my rifle, and it shoots really good. And Janae's Rifles wants me to shoot their rifle, right? And their rifle may not be as good as the rifle I'm already shooting. I already have a rifle. Like, what? I don't need another rifle. I already paid for my rifle.
Sure.
And it's not like I can go sell my rifle that I've, been shooting for a year. Might, but it's not going to be, a whole lot of money. And they want me to make 1 post a week, and they want me to compete 3 times a year. And they would, for parts that cost like maximum $1,500.
Right.
Right. So it's going to cost me $1,500 to go fly to a match, shoot the match, and fly home. Right. So I've already put $1,500 into the sponsorship, and they gave me a rifle that I already had another rifle. So that's when you really have to look and be like, is this worth it to me? Is it going to, because the other thing is there are some very good sponsors in the sport that will do what they say. Mm-hmm. And then there's also a lot of people in marketing that, hey, let's start it out like this, and then everything goes well. At the end of this year, we'll elevate to the next level. And basically what you then have to say is, I've been in the sport for a really long time. I have a history of doing what I say I'm going to do. Here's my references on that I do what I say I'm going to do. And this is what I ask for in return. Because what will end up happening is they're going to get over that year that they're with you of shooting Janae's rifles, right? Janae's rifles marketing team is going to get 150 pictures of me shooting this gun. And I'm going to see in 3 years, I'm going to be walking down a hall at a trade show and look up and be like, oh, that's me holding Janae's rifle that I never got paid to shoot. And it's 3 years later, and they're still using me in their marketing. And they haven't given me anything since then.
Sure.
So they got years worth of content and media from you that they're going to use to promote their rifle. And all they ever did was give you
a rifle.
Yeah. And you already had one.
Sure.
So you really have to sit back and look and be honest with yourself, because the first thing that especially new people in the sport, and they're like, so let's say I'm new, I'm in the sport. It's like, oh, I've done well in like 2 or 3 matches, and a company reaches out to me. I'm like, oh my, somebody looked at me. Like, I'm so excited. I have an opportunity for a sponsorship. And I get that 100%. Like, you're excited because like somebody noticed, right? You're setting a precedence, right? And then the other thing that I've had legitimate conversations with very good friends is, hey, if you take this deal, what happens if the largest rifle manufacturer in the company contacts you in a month and wants to pay you $50,000 a year to shoot their guns? And this, you have to say no, because you already told Janae's Rifles that you're going to shoot for them this year, right? So now they're like, oh, okay, well, we're looking for somebody, and that company is actively, they want somebody right now to start shooting for them. So they're going to go find somebody else, right? And that opportunity is likely gone forever.
Oh yeah.
Right. Because if they go and find somebody else and that somebody else does really good for them, they're not contacting you again to come back after your deal is done. So that's the other thing that you have to take into account is like, am I messing up potential future things that might provide me the ability to keep competing or to compete at a higher level? Because maybe they're, paying and you're getting money. So now you can buy more ammo, or now you can afford to go to more matches, or whatever it is. You're giving up an opportunity. Mm-hmm. So you have to sit down, contact somebody. There are some very good people in this sport, and you'd be surprised. We're still in hopefully it lasts for a really long time. Like, I know that Janae, like if somebody contacted you and asked you for advice on something, you would give them very good advice. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. And you can straight up hop into the top 5 men and women's competitors' DMs and say, hey, this is my situation. What would you do? Right. Yeah. And they'll tell you 100% they're going to help you out. Oh yeah. And they're not going to try and, most everybody is not going to try and snipe that deal from you. Right. Like they're like, hey, listen, this is what I would do. This is how I'd approach it. These are the things that you need to think about. And they're going to be honest with you about it.
You've also talked about setting a precedent about what you accept, not just in reference to yourself, but to what it then sets a precedent for everyone else in our sport too. And that's something that I did not think about one time until you said it to me. In reference, I don't even know what it was about, but like I had an opportunity and you were like, you know, if you accept a deal that is devaluing you, you are then telling that company that other people in our sport, that's the best that they can offer and we will take it as well.
Yeah.
And so not only am I taking a shitty deal for me, but I'm setting a precedent with that sponsorship that like everyone else, this is what we're worth too, which is then cheapening our entire sport.
Yeah.
And I never thought about it in that lens. I was like so focused on what it meant for me.
Yeah.
And at that time I didn't have any sponsorships, I don't think. So I was very close to accepting a very low deal.
Yeah, you were the bright-eyed person I was talking about.
Yeah, 100%.
Somebody, they actually
noticed me.
called me. Yeah, they called me.
Somebody cares. They noticed.
Well, I had nothing.
Yeah.
So to get anything from a sponsorship, I was like, rock on, man. Yeah, like absolutely. But I didn't have the foresight to see down the road of like, hey, but I know that's good now, but maybe wait because there's going to be something even better, not just for you, but for everyone in the sport if we can set a better standard.
Yeah, because it's, especially for you, I think that was after you won the championship, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it was like in the month after, because I warned you.
Yeah.
Like a couple days later, I was like, hey, they're going to come out of the woodwork here. So make sure you're, approaching things right. And, but you do, right? So as somebody who, like you, you're the current champion. If you say, sure, Jake's ammo, I'll take a 10% discount and buy ammo from you. Like, you're a customer, you're not a sponsored shooter.
Yeah.
But if you take that, well, now they just got into the sport with the best female that's in the sport for a 10% discount that they're making money on. So you have now set the precedence. So let's say that...
Yeah, so everybody else gets in cheaper.
Let's say that Jake is the second best, right? Female, because we're not, Jake's second best female.
I still couldn't make second best, but that's fine.
So
Still lose that battle, but anyway.
So if let's say my wife, let's say Casey.
Casey.
Casey's second best female in the sport, and she contacts Jake's Ammo, and she's like, hey, I'd really like to represent your ammo. This is what I do. I know a lot about ammo and this, and this is what I'm asking for. That company's like, we got Janae for 10% discount. Why do we need second place? We don't need second place.
Right.
So you have just taken opportunities from other people by doing that. So what I would suggest is that if you are coming up in the sport and you are doing very good, you need to sit down, likely with, like in my case, my wife or whoever else, significant other, and write it down and say, this is what I'm willing to accept. So that way, when you get a phone call from somebody, or because let's say you've gotten in to be really good friends with somebody, that person is with another company, and the company they're with is like, hey, we want to pick up another shooter. They give them your number, they call you. When that phone call happens, you already have set, this is my absolute bottom dollar for what it's going to take to represent a company, right? That way, going into the conversation, you already have. You have numbers on the piece of paper that you're not like, this is minimum what it's going to be worth for me to go and do that. But yeah, that's...
To find those numbers, though, you may want to talk to some people in the sport before you just shell out and be like, oh, I think I'm worth like 25 grand. I don't know. It sounds like a low number to me. Yeah. But in reality, like, some people are getting 5 or 10 max, right?
Yeah.
So,
and we can talk about like the actual sponsorships that people are getting versus like what probably people think they're getting. But definitely, like, I'll use Zach because he's glutton for punishment. But like, if I called Zach and said, hey man, I wouldn't be like, how much do you get paid for sponsors?
Sure,
because you don't ask people that,
right?
But if you more approached it like, hey, this is what I think it's going to be worth, whatever, he may say, cool your jets, little homie.
Right.
You're not getting 30 grand.
Right.
You know, or he might say like, hey, I think that you might be able to expect more than that. And like, this is based on what you've done, based on what you're doing in the sport, based on how long you've been in the sport. This is probably about the level that you need to be asking for. Right. And don't just call Zach, call and talk to, hop in people's DMs, whatever, and say, hey, what do you think I should be asking for? And you're going to get a range.
Sure.
Pick the middle of the range.
Yep.
Maybe the low end is like the absolute lowest that you're going to take, and the high end is the highest. And then be honest with yourself about it. Right. You know, winning anything is hard. So like winning a regional is hard. Right. Winning some regionals is a lot harder than winning other regionals.
In fact.
Right.
Big
So like showing up to a regional and getting third place is hard. It's like not devaluing it, not anything. Like you put in the time, you showed up, you were the third best that showed up that weekend. Right. There is also, like, I'll use an example from this year. Hepner, Aaron, and me were all at the same match, right? Fourth place was really, really hard that weekend.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it was not easy to get fourth place that weekend. If Allward was there, you had first, second, third, fourth from the championship at one regional.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Then you go to the next regional, which I don't know what the next regional was. So if you were at the next regional and you won,
We're not talking about
we're not
you.
talking specifically about you. But you could go to another regional during the year and show up, and nobody in the top 10 at the championship the previous year, none of those people might be there.
Right.
So it might be a much easier regional to be in. So you really need to be honest with yourself about it. Like
Instead of saying I won 5 podiums at different regionals, who was at those regionals whenever I won,
evaluate,
and how hard was it? I think we were going to create some type of point system in the past with tactical games about if this was a 9 match or an 8 match or a 7 match, depending on which super
almost
hard
like
to
a
do,
slope rating for a golf course.
Sure.
Like how hard was this regional?
Exactly. How hard was this course or whatever. Yeah. So I think that would be good eventually to, I mean, it's impossible now with as many scores as we've stacked up over the years, but to be honest with yourself and with the sponsors when they talk to you and say, hey, look, I did win this, but you know, I won this because of blank. In a match that everybody was at, I got 6th or I got 5th or whatever it is.
And I would say like one of the worst things that you can do is oversell yourself, because let's say let's say, hey, you go to a sponsor and say, I have podiumed 10 times, and you leave out the fact that 7 of those were in intermediate, and 3 of those were in tactical, which, no disrespect at all, it's all hard. Like it is all hard to go and win an intermediate is still really hard.
Yeah, you have to shoot really well.
And so, however, but if you go do that and you leave out the details, what do you think is going to happen? Eventually they're going to find out. Right. And what do you think is going to happen when they find out? They have a bad taste in their mouth, not only for you, but the sport in general.
Sure.
So likely they won't come back and go find somebody that they were looking for. They're not going to come back. Like they're gone. And then that's bad for the organization as well, because then now it's like, well, we got burned. We tried the tactical games thing and we got burned. So like you're making Nick's job harder, right? Yep, because like they came into the sport. They were like, because maybe they're like, hey, let's dip our toe into the water and see if there is an ROI in the sport. We're going to pick up an athlete and see how it goes this year. And then next year we might come on as the title sponsor. Right. And let's say that person kind of not like deceives them, but leaves some details out and doesn't perform. They get no ROI. You know, nobody's going out to search what kind of ammo this person's shooting or whatever it is. And then they're like, hey, nobody used, like, we didn't sell one round of ammo to the tactical games people this year. then now that it really it hurts the sport in totality, from like the organization and the shooters.
Sure.
Both get kind of
100%.
burned from that. So be very honest
Right.
with, like, I have had 2 companies for sure. There might be another one that I was like, hey, I don't think I'm a great, I'm not a great runner. So me hawking your running stuff probably isn't the best. Here's some people that are really good at running, so maybe go look at those people, and
Sure.
here's their contact information. Like, in the future, if God blesses me with new knees and I get to go, run super fast again, I'll contact you. But what you've done is earned that company's respect.
Sure.
So if I were to call that company in the future and say, hey, so for the last 8 months, I buried myself on a running program and I'm really good at running now, likely they're going to, because I was honest with them from the get-go. So likely I have a chance with them again. But if I'm like, yeah, I'll take your money and your shoes and your this, and go, and they're like, hey, dude, you're running 12-minute miles out there. Like, you're terrible at running. They're never going to talk to me again. Right. So, and then the thing that's also important to know about sponsorships and the two-way business thing is that likely, like, I think Tess Saub said it best, like, once you're into the 2A industry, like, you're going to retire in the 2A industry. And a lot of the sponsorships that I've had, and I haven't had, like, I don't really turn sponsorships too much. So, like, I stick with companies for a long time. However, I have gotten sponsorships because I treated this company really well. And let's say they were doing something that I'm not, like, you might want to go find a SWAT guy to represent you, because I think that they can represent your ballistic helmets better than I can. Right. But now they went to a pistol company and like, hey, I know a pistol guy that was honest with me about, I don't think that I'm a good fit for you because you can find somebody better. They're going to call you. Right. So those people will skip around every 3 or 4 years. They're going to move to different companies. And if you were good to them and you stayed in contact with them and you were honest with them the whole time and you did what you said you were going to do, they're going to call you when they go to the next company. Right. Because good people that do what they say they're going to do with their sponsorships are hard to find.
Yes.
So if you're doing what you said you're going to do, you are who you portrayed yourself to be, they're going to call you in the future. So, like, don't take $1 today in spite of $10 in a week. Right. Like, always be, make good decisions for the future on that. But
last question. Do you have to be an elite to get a sponsorship?
no, there's definitely, I've recommended, it's specific, but I've recommended people who are not an elite. There's a female tactical competitor that I gave their information to a company because of her job outside of the sport. And I was like, hey, listen. And I was honest with them. I was like, this girl doesn't compete in elite. However, she's a very good. And honestly, she never tries to pretend like she's somebody she isn't. Right. Even on social media, any of that stuff. But she's a badass at her work, right? And in the past, she's been a badass. So I was like, hey, I think that this person would be a really good fit for y'all's company. Like, they're going to represent what y'all are wanting to represent really well. And then she shows up and she is who she says she is. And she's not scared. She's not using excuses. Like, she shows up, she competes. She does really well in her division when she competes. And then she goes back to work where she's being a badass all day.
Sure.
Right. So no, you don't have to be an elite. And that even goes to the different kinds of sponsorships, right? So let's say, like Taylor Olhausen, he came in and he competed. He did a regular tackle.
He's done
right?
2, I think.
So, like, prime example of somebody who came into the sport and could ask for sponsorships and could go after sponsorships if he wanted to, because he is in a very niche part of the sport.
Yes.
Where he is blazing fast with a gun, right? So if I'm a company that's selling go fast parts, like, he's probably somebody, because everybody knew when he showed up who he was from 3 Gun, right? So a lot of people probably started messaging going, hey man, I'm doing this with my rifle. What do you think about this? Because there's a lot of people starving for information in the tactical games right now. And he's absolutely somebody like, I don't think he podiumed. He didn't. I don't think he did, but he smoked everybody.
Yeah.
And like, I think second place in the 2-gun stage was like 60% or something, 70%. So like
a gap.
There's definitely niche places in there, right? If somebody showed up that was just super strong, right, and a barbell company wanted to come into the sport, prime, like,
Sure.
yeah, they may not be podium all the time, but people look at them for expertise in their niche in the sport, which is strength there, right? So yeah,
You're teasing Zach so hard right now.
Zach, but Zach can shoot too. Zach
Yeah.
I'm just making a joke about he's so strong.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to get a sponsorship, you don't have to be winning every event.
Sure.
But you do have to be really good at something. And I'm not saying just like kind of good.
Right.
I'm saying like Taylor O'Hausen is a perfect example on he came and he can blow everybody away and everybody noticed it. Right. So like, yeah, he's the guy.
Stood out a little bit.
Right. He stood out and people are going to look for him for information. So yeah, you don't have to be out there winning, but boy, you better be good at whatever your thing is in the sport to be able to go ask for a sponsorship for it.
Sure.
Right on. You got anything?
No, I'm good.
I'm good. You got anything else?
Cool. Thank you
Boom.
guys. That's sponsorships. We'll see y'all next time.